Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Altishan, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today we have author, illustrator, and speaker Katie Kuperman to talk about learning through laughter, resources to teach practical skills to kids through humor. I love this article. Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for having me.
I am doing well. I'm excited about this. I think this is just a great topic to talk about. But before we do, um, why don't you kind of talk about who you are, what you're doing, how you kind of got into this? And I know that you wrote some books about it.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Katie Kuperman. I am a writer professionally and have been for 16 years now. And I think through the course of helping numerous clients bring their own stories to life in so many different ways, from marketing content all the way through to ghostwriting books and so forth, I began to felt a very strong desire about 3, 4 years ago to start writing my own books. So what we're going to talk about today is actually my two children's books, which happened quite in I'll call it a coincidence or maybe a meant to be moment. I'm not quite sure, but someone I know said to me about a year ago, I'm surprised you haven't written a children's book yet. And then I thought to myself, yeah, why haven't I written a children's book yet? And, I came up with a character that is a bicycle wheel. So it's a very unique character that you won't see in a ton of different books. And that was my goal if I was going to create a children's book series, that I really wanted to have a unique character and not something that had been done a million times before. And so that character has come to life, and there's a lot of humor in my books, but most importantly, both books come with a very strong message and a positive message, because as a writer, I just strongly believe that everything I write, I want it to have a positive message behind it to put that out into the world.
Well, it's good. I love that. I love that. Before we get into your books, you know, specifically, can you talk a little bit about, because I know you've written about this, just the importance of reading to your child?
Yes, so this is something I believe very strongly in, and there's many, many studies out there that will also prove this point, but there are so many benefits to reading with your child. And let me be very specific right now, too. Not only handing a book to your child to read on their own, which also has value. And even at any age, even when they're really little, if they're just browsing through the pictures and turning the pages and, getting in their own little world there as they experience a story, that's a beautiful thing. And there's lots of benefits to that as well. But there's something very special about reading with your child, reading to your child. As they get older, they read parts to you. You read parts to them. Maybe they read a whole story to you. So there's an element of connection there that's very important. And further to that, when you read together, there's an opportunity for your child to learn in so many different ways, because you're there to answer any questions. So in certain books, there may be important conversations that you might have in the middle of the story because a certain topic has been raised and they have questions about it. Or on a more simpler form, but also very valuable, there might be words they don't understand. Maybe some books have larger words they've never seen before, and you have an opportunity to teach them and expand their vocabulary. And I think that connection piece and the talking piece. So when you read a story that resonates with your child in a certain way, or that sparks a question in their mind, you have an opportunity to talk and learn and grow together.
I love that. It seems to me that, learning new words, hearing new words, all of that is just really important. But you also develop just, and I think it's a skill, you learn to listen. Just,
Yeah.
it's something people need, don't do as well as they should sometimes.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think sometimes we focus on the talking side of communication and not the listening, but it really is a double-pronged approach. You have to be a great listener and not only a great talker. You need to be a great listener in order to be a great talker, and vice versa. You have to have that listening component. And I really believe when it comes to children specifically, when they feel as though an adult close to them in their lives is truly and genuinely and intently listening to them, that goes a long way because they feel heard and they feel seen. And it's almost as though you are creating this friendship together, not only parent-child relationship, but friendship, so that you can walk through life in this way together. You're both being seen and heard.
You you love to use humor, and I just think that's really cool. Um, how how do you use humor? I mean, obviously it's funny, but I mean, is there intentional things you're trying to produce through humor?
So I think when children feel happy and comfortable in whatever it is that they're doing, in this case, we're talking about reading, so I'll just focus on that. But if they feel happy and part of a big part of happiness is having laughter and being able to laugh and find something really funny or enjoyable, then their minds open up in a different way. And I believe that that makes them more receptive then to perhaps learn something. Because we all know some books that, I don't want to say they harp too much on the lesson, but if it's really focused on the lesson only, and there isn't too much of anything else in there to grip the child, then I believe the lesson may not resonate quite the same way. So I experimented with the first book, and I have a lot of, I call them wheelie puns. So the main character is a wheel, and so I use, instead of saying really, I say wheelie, and I say, get rollin' to the store, or whatever it is that I'm talking about. Or in the latest book, something happens at school and the teacher puts onto the students a Papa Wheelie quiz. So I try to be clever, even just to get a little chuckle out of a child as they are reading. Because again, I believe that that creates a lighthearted environment, which then makes them more receptive to the learning piece. And I do have a learning piece towards the end of each book where I invite the reader to picture their lives as a bicycle wheel. And what does that really mean? Well, I call the center hub of the wheel is you and everything that you are. And then the spokes that are coming out from the center hub are all the different elements of your life. So that's friends, family, school, extracurriculars, fun time, toys, reading, and so forth. And then the tread of the wheel is your world. So all of these spokes are extending out to make your entire world. And at the center of that world is the core of who you are. And then I talk about, certain lessons such as being resilient and resourceful. So in the first book, it's all about getting muddy. And I'm using the mud as an example of bad things that happen to us, and bad things happen to all of us. Sometimes we cause them ourselves and sometimes we don't, but we all get a little bit muddy sometimes. And so I invite the child to see how, yes, you'll get muddy in this life, but there's always a way to get clean again. And it's not really the mud that you should focus on, but rather what you do next that counts. And then in the second story, the lesson is how to calm a racing mind. So the second story is about being really speedy and overwhelmed, particularly in your head when you have way too many thoughts spinning around in there. And I think every adult can relate to this as well, when there's just too much going on, or we put too much pressure on ourselves about something, or the holidays are looming ahead and we have so many things to do that we can't keep our minds straight, and we get this speedy sensation. And it's all about how to calm that down, how to bring yourself back to a base level where you feel comfortable and happy. And so if I create humor around these important and somewhat complex topics, I'm hoping that the reader feels more comfortable to learn that lesson and then also to remember it.
The effect you produce, it feels like, is talking about serious things, like you're saying, um, in a way that it's more open. And is is there a what would you recommend to a parent who says, I love your books. I want to read some other books. How do I go about trying to figure out, what are just, I don't want to say silly, but books that don't maybe have anything to do with my kid, or should they just read them? Um, what can they do to kind of explore that whole humor, fun, that talking about serious stuff that their kids may be involved in?
Yeah, there are so many great books out there now that really delve into feelings and emotions that children experience. And I think sometimes as adults, we have a tendency to think that just because they're kids, they don't experience these challenges the same way that we do. And I would argue that in many cases they do. It could be on a different scale and a different level, but we are all human beings on this earth and dealing with these same similar challenges, not always the same, but there are commonalities throughout every course of our life here on earth. And so for parents that are looking for books like this, I would prompt them, if you're searching online, use keywords like kids' emotions, or maybe there's something specific that you feel like your child might like to discuss. So for example, books about resilience, or books about feeling scared, or books about dealing with the pressures of competition. Lots of parents have their kids in competitive sports these days, which wasn't, I don't think, as much the norm a couple of decades ago. It's a big thing right now. And so there's so many pressures that go along with that. And maybe it's something like that. So I think, using those specific keywords for what you're looking for online. And then if you're going into a bookstore, there's so many great, or even the local library. Librarians have a wealth of knowledge about books and the books that are coming into the library that I don't think we use them enough sometimes. We just go to the library computer and try to type things in, but they're there to help. And so something that you feel you really want to discuss with your child, or something you feel that they might be interested in, ask them and they might be able to help as well. And so that goes with the bookstore too. A lot of the people that work there, and sometimes in children's sections of bookstores, there's a specialized person working in that area, and you might be able to get some very specific recommendations. And then, of course, sampling it, right? There's nothing better. Reading those first few pages and saying, oh, yeah, I can see my kid resonating with this, or no, this one's not for us. Let's check the next one.
I think you say that your books are kind of the sweet spot. Was it like 4 to 10 years old?
I do say 4 to 10. It sounds like a big range, but I do think the 4-year-olds will maybe find it slightly more mature for them, and the 10-year-olds will be on the upper cusp. But I believe that, the 4-year-olds, it's kind of pushing them to think about things. I believe that there's never too early to start these conversations. So they know that this is common and this is something that I can talk about. And this is something that is, as you say, out in the open and open for communication. And then for the 10-year-old, it's almost a reminder and a sense of comfort. I'm not alone, and this does happen, and I can talk about it. And this is a funny book to remind me how to calm my racing mind, or how to be tough in certain situations.
As an illustrator, I think, really understand that there's also a power in the pictures, and your pictures are really cool. I mean, and that's all part of, people say, well, it's a kid's book, it just got pictures, but the pictures are actually kind of important, aren't they, as well?
Absolutely. They're so important. In fact, sometimes I feel that important messaging could be lost if the visual isn't strong enough. And I would say that it's the case for children and adults. Sometimes adults aren't fully gripped by the book, and it is usually a group activity, especially for the younger ages. The pictures are very important, and I didn't know how to illustrate a year ago, and I've always been able to draw. But when I wrote my first book, I was thinking, I will just get an illustrator, someone will illustrate this for me, and I will just be the writer. And I got this crazy idea in my head, what if I could do it all myself? I want it to say written and illustrated by Katie. I don't want it to say just one. And so I thought, let's give this a go. And I had to teach myself to take my drawings and to digitize them in a way that I wanted to look professional and polished on the computer, learn how to color, learn how to manipulate, turn into a page, and so forth. And it's a great challenge, but it's also a small element of extra stress for me because I know how important those images are to the story. You know, every page I'm thinking to myself, how can I bring this to life in a way that's really engaging for the child, that makes sense to the adult, that's colorful and exciting to look at, but that doesn't take away too much from the words. You know, it's a whole package that I believe has to come together in the right way in order to have the biggest impact. Absolutely.
Oh, I like that. The you talked about how resilience was a big kind of thing you wanted to talk about in these books. And I think that's great. It's funny, as I was kind of reading through it, my brain was going to, well, these spokes, like you said, and the importance of connection. Because I was just reading it, and I remember when I had a bike that a spoke broke and the wheel didn't roll as well as it's supposed to roll. And I just
Yeah.
thought that was interesting. And that was really kind of almost more through the, like I said, the like you said, each one goes out to something different.
Yeah. I love that actually. Maybe that'll be a future book, the something breaks.
Well, that's
um,
what I was just going to ask you. Is any plans for rather specific, but other topics you want to approach or think would be important to approach?
Yeah, definitely. I have many ideas. So the latest book, Speedy Spokes, is inspired by my son, who has the speediest mind I've ever known. It's incredible. But we all know, that can be a gift, but it can also be a detriment, which is why I think it's so important to have the tools at your disposal to know that you have the power to control that mind. And the next one's coming in the spring. That's going to be called Spokes Blows a Tire. So that reminds me of your, one spoke breaking.
Yeah.
That one's inspired by my daughter, who that'll be all about the tendency for, something happens that doesn't quite go your way, or you're running late, or you asked for something, the answer is no, or you thought something was going to be one way and it ends up being another way. And you blow. The tire blows because you don't know how to go, you almost go from 0 to 100. So how can I express my emotions and take them to even a 70 or an 80, but avoid the full blow? There's a way for us to communicate, and it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be upset. Absolutely. But there's a way to communicate that without getting all the way to a fully blown tire. And that I think adults can also relate to that too, right? We've all been there, for sure. So through these children's books, I want to bring up things that are hopefully a little bit out of the norm. There's lots of books out there that talk about dealing with sadness or fear or inadequacy or I'm trying to take it, I think, a level further to talk about the things that aren't so mainstream and that maybe not every child or parent or family is actively thinking about, that their child might be experiencing and maybe not able to talk about it yet. So I'm trying to go a little bit further with the realm, but I do like the simplicity of the other ones too. So we'll see where the series takes me.
Have you been getting feedback from people saying, I love this. What about something like that? Or have you been getting feedback of like, can you write another one about this?
Yeah, so that's definitely starting to come now after this second one. And I hope the more I write, the more people realize, oh, it's a series. Maybe I can give my input, because I love that, right? Hearing directly from readers who have other ideas that I may not have considered yet. So a few common ones are, the seasons, something to do with the seasons. Here in Canada, it's like we switch seasons, it feels like so often. So, the how can I tie maybe some kind of emotion or experience into each season that maybe kids could relate to. Another one that I did here was uh, part of the competitive nature. So Spokes is part of a cycling club, and this wheel learns how to do jumps and tricks and spins. So I got a recommendation to do a book all about that cycling club, and sort of what that might look like. And again, maybe that would relate a lot to competitive kids and in competitive sports, and how you deal with all the pressures in and around that. So yeah, I'd like to hear more though, more recommendations, because I think that would be very interesting to then produce books according to directly what the audience is wanting or craving.
Yeah. But in all this, humor is going to be your delivery.
Definitely. I'm going to always try to have those funny parts for sure throughout. I think it's
Uh,
important.
oh, I agree. I think it kids when they can have fun, they they're more open to learning, I think.
Yes.
Wow. Well, this has been really cool. We're unfortunately getting out of time, but um, if there's something you want to say to someone that we just didn't talk about, some piece of wisdom, some tip, um, what would it be?
I think it would be whether you use books or some other tool or some other activity, connect with your children. And sometimes that means doing things that maybe you don't particularly want to do and that you maybe think are a quote unquote waste of time, but it's not a waste of time to them. And whatever is important in their life, figure out a way to be a part of it a little bit and to connect with them in these kinds of common ways. Or sometimes it might just be that they want someone to sit beside them, or sometimes it just means you stop and sit still for a moment. There's power in that too. I've found my own kids will open up in different ways when I just sit down and I'm not really doing anything. And I think we live such busy lives, we have to consciously carve out time for the simple things. And it could just be 20 minutes of uninterrupted Lego, reading, building something, just chit chatting, anything at all. But when you create that line of connection, a spoke, let's call it,
Yeah,
and then you open the doors for many more ways to connect that will feel meaningful and powerful in your own life and your life with your child. And they will know that you're there. And there's a lot of power in that.
I love that. It's I don't know why, but again, this makes me think about your book again, and it's like the handles, that steer are the mom and dad, but they don't always have to be the ones to steer because they all work together.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Oh, well, we are unfortunately out, but I do want also to ask you to let people know if they want to get a hold of you or communicate with you or give you feedback. What's a good way to do that?
The best way, I would say, and the easiest way is, I mean, there's many ways. I'm on all the major social media outlets. You can look me up as Katie Kuperman Writes. But also another way is just to go right to my website, katiekuperman.com. Kuperman is spelled Kuperman. Funny spelling there. It's not my last name, it's my husband's, but I have to get used to it and spell it out for people.
I like that.
But yeah, you can go right to my website, email me, and get in touch with me that way.
Very good. Well, again, thank you so much for being here to talk about that. Learning through laughter, I think, is an incredible resource for kids. And I love that you're using that in your books.
Yes, me too. And I'll just go like that.
I love it.
Thank you
See
so much for
everybody?
having me on.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
And everyone else, thank you for joining us. If anyone has any further questions on today's topic, you can get a hold of Katie, or you can also post it here and we can get you connected with her. So until next time, stay safe, stay happy.